The Superdome Murders. Hurricane Katrina's Hidden Horror. August 29, 2024, 19 years to the day. Marcus Webb stands outside the Louisiana Superdome, now the Caesars Superdome, under a sky so blindingly clear it feels like an insult. The sun beats down on polished concrete, where nearly 2 decades ago, floodwaters mixed with sewage, desperation, and something far darker that nobody wanted to admit. He's 34 now. He was 15 when his family walked through those doors and never walked out. The official death toll from Hurricane Katrina, 1,833 souls lost in Louisiana alone. But there's another number, one that doesn't make it into most documentaries, one that gets buried in footnotes. 705 missing persons who were never found. Bodies washed into the Gulf of Mexico, buried under collapsed buildings, or simply lost in the chaos of the largest displacement of Americans since the Dust Bowl. Marcus's family became 4 of those 705. His mother, Patricia, 38 years old, his father, Vincent, 42, his little sister, Jasmine, just 9, obsessed with butterflies and convinced she'd be a veterinarian someday. His grandmother, Lorraine, 67, who'd survived segregation, the civil rights movement, and raising 5 children only to seek shelter from a hurricane and disappear. They entered the Superdome on August 28, 2005, seeking safety from the storm. Somewhere between the stadium's massive gates and the hell that unfolded inside over the next 72 hours, they vanished completely. The official explanation that Marcus heard repeated in foster homes, therapist offices, and police stations for 19 years, likely drowned during evacuation attempts. Bodies never recovered from the floodwaters. Case closed. Move on. Marcus never believed it. Not when he was a traumatized teenager, shuffled between 3 different foster homes in 2 years. Not when he aged out of the system at 18 with nothing but a garbage bag of belongings and a social security check. Not when he put himself through college studying criminal justice. Not when he became a victim advocate, dedicating every waking hour to finding the lost, the forgotten, the discarded. Today, 19 years later, everything changes. His phone vibrates in his pocket. Our text from Detective Sarah Chen, NOPD Cold Case Unit. We found something. You need to see this. Not on the phone. Come to the station now. Marcus stares at the Superdome's massive structure, its curves like a sleeping giant that swallowed his childhood whole and never spit it back out. The building has been renovated, improved, renamed. They play football here now. People cheer. They've tried to erase what happened, but today the giant finally speaks. Marcus starts walking toward his car, his hands shaking so badly he drops his keys twice before getting the door open. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments. I want to know how far this story reaches, because what I'm about to tell you happened in New Orleans, but it could have happened anywhere. New Orleans, Louisiana, August 2005. Population 484,674. The city sits in a bowl, most of it below sea level, cradled between Lake Pontchartrain to the north and the Mississippi River, curving through its heart like a drunken snake. It's protected, theoretically, by a network of levees and pumps maintained by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The French Quarter sits on the highest ground, about 13 feet above sea level. Ironic, since it's also the oldest part of the city. The lower 9th Ward, by contrast, sits at one of the lowest points. Predominantly black, working class, built on drained swampland that the city had promised was safe to develop. That promise would prove catastrophic. The Webb family lived in the 7th Ward, 3.2 miles northeast of the Superdome. Their shotgun house on North Roman Street, painted yellow with white trim, front porch just wide enough for 2 chairs, had been in Patricia's family for 3 generations. Her grandmother bought it in 1954 for $3,800. By 2005, it was paid off, worth maybe $90,000 and priceless to them. Vincent Webb worked as a diesel mechanic at the Port of New Orleans, pulling in $42,000 a year. Patricia was a nurse at Charity Hospital, making $38,000. Combined, they cleared about $80,000 annually. Not wealthy by any means, but stable, rooted. They owned their home, paid their bills, saved a little. They were living the working-class American dream. Marcus was starting his sophomore year at McDonough 35 High School. Jasmine was going into 4th grade, already reading at a 6th grade level. Grandmother Lorraine lived with them. her COPD managed with oxygen tanks and twice-daily breathing treatments. They were a family. They had plans. Jasmine wanted a puppy for Christmas. Marcus was trying out for the basketball team. Patricia had been saving to replace the water heater. Then, August 26, 2005, a tropical depression in the Bahamas strengthened into Hurricane Katrina. The Superdome, Louisiana's largest designated shelter of last resort. Official capacity for football games, 73,000 fans. On August 28-29, 2005, it would house approximately 30,000 evacuees, though the exact number remains disputed to this day. Some estimates go as high as 35,000. The city designated it as a refuge of last resort for those who couldn't evacuate. The elderly, the sick, the disabled, families without cars or money for hotel rooms. The poorest and most vulnerable were told, "If you can't leave, go to the Superdome, you'll be safe there." That promise was a lie. Inside those walls, no power for air conditioning once the storm hit, toilets backing up within hours, food and water supplies that ran out in less than a day, medical supplies exhausted almost immediately, National Guard presence of only 400 soldiers trying to manage 30,000 terrified people. Darkness, except for emergency lights. Heat like a furnace. Temperatures reaching 95 degrees Fahrenheit with humidity near 100%. Fear so thick you could taste it. The Superdome spans 166,000 square feet of floor space, not counting the concourses, service areas, equipment rooms, executive suites, storage areas, and basement levels. During those 72 hours of chaos, it became a labyrinth where people could disappear, and people did disappear. Besides the Webb family, 4 other people would vanish from the Superdome during those 3 days. Terrell Jackson, 19 years old, LSU sophomore studying engineering. He'd evacuated to the Superdome specifically to volunteer, helping elderly evacuees navigate the crowds. His mother begged him not to go. He went anyway because, in his words, "That's what you do." Jennifer Cao, 31, Vietnamese-American convenience store owner from the 7th Ward. 8 months pregnant with her first child, a girl she planned to name Lily. Her husband was deployed in Iraq. She couldn't evacuate alone, so she went to the Superdome. Her last voicemail to her husband, recorded August 28th. "I'm scared, but I'll be okay. I love you. I'll call when this is over." Raymond Pops Guidry, 58, former longshoreman, diabetic. He'd worked the docks for 35 years before a back injury forced disability retirement. He needed insulin every 12 hours. He went to the Superdome because Charity Hospital had evacuated, and he had nowhere else to go. Shanice Williams, 24, single mother. She was there with her 3-year-old daughter, Kira. Shanice worked 2 jobs, Walmart cashier during the day, Burger King at night, to keep an apartment in Gentilly. She had no car, no family in the city, no choice but the Superdome. Unlike the Webbs, these 4 arrived alone or became separated from companions immediately in the chaos. No witnesses who knew them, no family members searching the same sections. They simply vanished into the crowd and then vanished from existence. 8 people total, 8 lives erased in 72 hours. For 19 years, everyone assumed the storm killed them. They were wrong. August 28, 2005, Sunday, the day before. Patricia Webb woke at 6:15 a.m. to a house that felt like it was holding its breath. She lay in bed for a moment, listening. The air had that strange electric quality that comes before something terrible. No birds singing, no traffic noise yet, just an unnatural stillness that made her skin prickle. The radio on her nightstand was already on. Vincent must have turned it on and gone outside. Mayor Ray Nagin's voice filled the bedroom, and he was saying things she'd never heard a New Orleans mayor say. "This is the storm we've always feared. This is going to be catastrophic." She got up, pulled on her bathrobe, and found Vincent in the front yard, hammering plywood over the last window. Sweat already soaked through his shirt despite the early hour. He looked up when she came out. "We need to go, Patty." His voice was flat, certain. "Now." Patricia looked back at their house. The yellow paint Vincent had put on 3 years ago, the porch swing her father had built, the garden where Lorraine grew tomatoes every summer. 27 years of marriage lived in that house. Jasmine was born in the back bedroom because the contractions came too fast to make it to the hospital. "The Superdome?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Charity's evacuating all hospital staff. You won't have a job to go to. Vincent met her eyes. And we can't outrun this storm in the Civic, not with Mama on oxygen, not in contraflow traffic. We'd run out of gas somewhere on I-10 and be stuck. Patricia knew he was right. They'd watched the news at 5 a.m. Cars backed up for 30 miles trying to evacuate. Gas stations running dry. People stranded on highways. And Lorraine couldn't survive hours in a hot car without her oxygen concentrator, which needed electricity. How long do you think? Patricia asked. A day, maybe 2. Then we come back and clean up. She nodded. Neither of them said what they were both thinking, that the Superdome was where you went when you'd run out of options. By 11:30 a.m. they were packing. Marcus loaded his backpack with the essentials of a 15-year-old boy, his Xbox portable gaming system, 3 games, a phone charger, a change of clothes. Jasmine insisted on bringing her photo album, the pink one with butterflies on the cover, and her stuffed rabbit Mr. Whiskers. She packed them carefully into her Dora the Explorer backpack. Patricia packed practical things, a change of clothes for everyone, toiletries, flashlights, batteries. She filled 4 water bottles and packed crackers, granola bars, anything that wouldn't spoil. She packed Lorraine's medications in a Crown Royal bag, purple velvet worn soft from years of use. The bag had belonged to her own father. Vincent's contribution was his expired work ID from the port of New Orleans. Might help, he said. Shows we're locals. Lorraine moved slowly through the house, her portable oxygen tank wheeling behind her. Every breath was deliberate, measured. She'd been rationing her energy since dawn. She paused at the mantel, looking at photographs. Her wedding picture from 1960, her children as babies, Marcus and Jasmine at every age. "Mama, we need to go," Patricia said gently. "I'm looking," Lorraine replied. "Just looking." By 2:47 p.m., they were ready to leave. Vincent locked the front door for the last time. He tested the handle twice, a habit he'd had for as long as Patricia had known him. He was a man who checked things, who made sure. The key went in his pocket. None of them knew that water would reach the roofline within 48 hours. Everything they were leaving behind, every photograph, every piece of furniture, every memory embedded in those walls, would be destroyed. 3 generations of life reduced to waterlogged, moldy wreckage. Marcus looked back as they walked away. His basketball hoop stood against the side of the house, the net swaying in the pre-storm wind. He'd made 17 free throws in a row yesterday afternoon. His personal record. He'd never touch that hoop again. The drive to the Superdome took 40 minutes, normally a 15-minute trip. Traffic was gridlocked. The streets were packed with people doing the same thing they were, families with too much luggage, elderly folks moving too slowly, children asking questions nobody could answer. They arrived at 4:20 p.m. The line to enter stretched for blocks. Thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands, all converging on this one building. People carried garbage bags of belongings, pushed wheelchairs, carried children who'd given up walking. A woman near them had a birdcage with 2 parakeets. A man had a shopping cart filled with photograph albums, everyone bringing what they couldn't bear to lose. The Superdome loomed above them, grey concrete and curved walls, massive and somehow ominous. Patricia held Jasmine's hand tightly. Vincent supported Lorraine, who was already breathing hard from the walk from the parking area. Marcus carried both backpacks, plus the plastic bag with their water and snacks. The line moved slowly. National Guard soldiers at the entrance were searching bags, confiscating anything that looked like a weapon. Marcus heard them take a man's pocket knife, a woman's scissors. They were thorough but overwhelmed, thousands of people pressing forward. At 5:03 p.m. they passed through Gate C. A soldier with corporal stripes directed them. "Section 127, follow the signs, stay with your family." They walked into the Superdome's interior. The floor was already covered with people, families clustered on blankets, elderly folks in folding chairs, children running despite their parents' calls to stay close. The air was thick, warm, smelling of sweat and fear, and the beginning of backed-up sewage. They found a spot in Section 127, about 30 feet from the nearest bathroom. Not ideal, but there was space enough for them to sit. Vincent spread out a blanket he'd brought. Lorraine sat down carefully, her oxygen tank beside her. Patricia opened a water bottle, took a small sip, passed it around. They had 4 bottles, had to make them last. Jasmine looked around, eyes wide. "Is this where we're sleeping?" "Just for tonight, baby," Patricia said. "Maybe tomorrow. Then we'll go home." Marcus knew she was lying. He'd seen her face when they locked the door. She didn't think they'd have a home to go back to. But none of them, not Patricia, not Vincent, not even Marcus, imagined the real horror. They thought the storm was the danger. They were wrong. Real quick, if you're finding this story as gripping as I am telling it, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps more people hear about these victims who deserve to be remembered. And subscribe if you haven't already, because this story gets so much darker from here. August 27th, 2005, Saturday. The day before the Webb family evacuated. 10 p.m. The National Hurricane Center upgraded Katrina from a Category 1 to a Category 3 hurricane. The projected path showed a direct hit on New Orleans. Max Mayfield, director of the National Hurricane Center, made a rare personal phone call to Governor Kathleen Blanco and Mayor Ray Nagin. His exact words, according to later testimony, "This is the one we've been talking about. This is the big one." 4:00 p.m., Governor Blanco declared a state of emergency. Contraflow evacuation was ordered. All highway lanes pointing outbound, none inbound. An estimated 1.2 million people fled the city over the next 18 hours. The highways looked like rivers of red taillights stretching to the horizon. But 300,000 plus residents remained. Some by choice, lifelong New Orleanians who'd survived hurricanes before and refused to leave. Others by necessity. No car, no money, no place to go, no way to evacuate an elderly or disabled family member. For them, the city opened the Superdome. August 28, 2005. Sunday, 9:30 a.m., Mayor Nagin issued the first ever mandatory evacuation order in New Orleans history. But the Superdome had already been designated as the shelter of last resort. City buses began transporting evacuees who needed help getting there. The message was clear. If you absolutely cannot leave, the Superdome is your only option. By noon, 15,000 people were inside. By 4 p.m., 25,000. By midnight, over 30,000. 5 p.m., the National Hurricane Center upgraded Katrina to Category 5. Maximum sustained winds 175 miles per hour. Storm surge forecast 18 to 22 feet. Scientists would later calculate that Katrina was releasing energy equivalent to detonating one Hiroshima atomic bomb every 20 minutes. 11 p.m. The last updates went out before communications started failing. Superdome population estimated between 26,000 and 30,000 people. Nobody knew the exact count. The air conditioning system failed. Temperature inside climbed to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity approached 100%. It felt like breathing through a wet blanket. People tried to sleep on the hard concrete floor. Children cried. Elderly folks struggled to breathe in the oppressive heat. Medical triage areas were already overwhelmed, and the storm hadn't even hit yet. August 29, 2005, Monday, the day everything broke. 1 a.m. The outer bands of Hurricane Katrina reached New Orleans. Wind began to howl around the Superdome's exterior like something alive and hunting. The building shuddered. People woke from uneasy sleep. Parents pulled children closer. 6:10 a.m. The eye of Hurricane Katrina made landfall near Bourras Triumph, Louisiana. Category 3 at landfall, sustained winds of 125 miles per hour, gusts exceeding 140. The storm was massive. Hurricane-force winds extended 103 miles from the center. New Orleans sat on the eastern, deadlier side of the storm track. Inside the Superdome, the lights flickered. Emergency generators kicked in, providing dim illumination. The building was shaking now, a constant vibration that made people's teeth hurt. 8:14 a.m. The Industrial Canal levee breached. Water poured into the lower 9th Ward at catastrophic speed. Then the 17th Street Canal levee failed. Then London Avenue Canal. 53 levee failures in total. 80% of New Orleans began to flood. Water rose at terrifying, impossible speed. In the lower 9th Ward, entire houses lifted off their foundations, floating for a few surreal moments before disintegrating into kindling. People climbed into attics to escape the rising water, then clawed at the wood trying to break through to the roof when the water kept rising. At least 1,577 people would die in Louisiana. Many drowned in their attics, fingernail marks gouged into the wood above them. 9:38 a.m. Inside the Superdome, disaster struck. 2 sections of the roof peeled away with sounds like artillery shells exploding. Metal shrieked, concrete dust rained down. Rain poured through the gaps, drenching the upper-level evacuees. People screamed. Stampedes started as crowds tried to move away from the breaches. National Guard soldiers, only 400 of them for 30,000 people, struggled to maintain any semblance of order. The toilets had backed up within the first 6 hours. The stench became unbearable: human waste, sweat, fear, and something else. The smell of systems breaking down, of civilization's thin veneer cracking. Darkness everywhere except for scattered emergency lights. Heat that felt like being pressed against a radiator. Diabetics going into shock from lack of insulin. Elderly people dying from heat exhaustion and dehydration. Babies crying, inconsolable, their parents out of formula and clean water. Communication with the outside world severed. Cell phone towers were down. Landlines dead. No radios working. No updates from authorities. No timeline for rescue. No way to call for help. The National Guard distributed military MREs, meals ready to eat, but nowhere near enough for 30,000 people. People fought over water bottles. Fistfights broke out over space, over supplies, over nothing at all because fear makes people animals. The darkness was the worst part. Stairwells became pitch black, hallways transformed into no man's lands. Concourses were lit only by occasional emergency lights, creating pools of dim illumination surrounded by absolute dark. People disappeared into bathrooms and sometimes didn't come back. Reported assaults, robberies, rapes. Later investigations would dispute many of these claims as rumors and hysteria, but in the moment, the terror was absolutely real. Families clustered together. Strangers became threats. Trust evaporated. The Superdome has 166,000 square feet of floor space. Add the concourses, service corridors, equipment rooms, executive suites, basement storage areas, and the number doubles. In the chaos with no power and no security, it became a maze where you could wander for hours and never see another person, or where you could be dragged into the dark and never be seen again. Critical to understanding what happened next, evacuations began September 1st. Buses arriving sporadically, chaotically. No manifest, no roll call, no coordination. Buses would pull up, doors would open, and desperate people would surge forward, fighting to get on. Families were separated. Children got on different buses than parents. Nobody was keeping track of who went where. 30,000 people entered the Superdome. Approximately 30,000 people eventually left. Nobody noticed that 8 of them never made it out alive. The Webb family was last seen together by Marcus at 7:30 p.m. on August 29th, day 1 of the storm. They were in Section 127, their designated area. Grandmother Lorraine was struggling to breathe. The heat, the humidity, the stress. Her COPD was getting worse. Her lips had a bluish tint. She was using her rescue inhaler every hour instead of every 4 hours like she was supposed to. Patricia was terrified. She was a nurse. She knew what respiratory distress looked like. Her mother was in trouble. "I'm going to find medical help," Patricia told Vincent. "Stay with Mama and Jasmine." Marcus's account, given to police in September 2005, repeated in therapy for years and carved into his memory forever. "I was thirsty. We'd already gone through 2 of our 4 water bottles. There was a National Guard supply station 3 sections over, maybe 200 feet away. Mom said I should go get more water while she found help for Grandma. I didn't want to leave them, but we needed water." The crowd was insane. People everywhere, pushing, shoving. It was dark except for emergency lights. The storm was still raging outside. You could hear it, this constant roar. I got to the National Guard station, waited in line for maybe 15 minutes, got 2 bottles of water. Then I tried to get back to Section 127. I couldn't find them. I looked everywhere. I was screaming their names. Other people were screaming too. Everybody was looking for somebody. I searched for hours. I found a National Guard soldier and told him my family was missing. He wrote their names on a piece of paper and said he'd help me look when things calmed down. Things never calmed down. Marcus would learn later, through witness statements collected by police. National Guard Corporal James DeShields testified, "I remember a black woman, late 30s, nurse's scrubs under a jacket, asking about medical help around 7:45 p.m. on August 29th. She was frantic, said her mother couldn't breathe. I directed her to Triage Station 3 on the lower concourse. That's the last I saw of her. Triage Station 3 was overwhelmed, dozens of people needing help, 2 paramedics and 1 doctor trying to handle it all. Nobody remembered seeing Patricia Webb. Jasmine's elementary school teacher, Mrs. Dorothy Chen, was also evacuated to the Superdome. She gave this statement: "I saw Jasmine around 8 p.m. She was with an older man, not her father. I knew Vincent Webb from parent-teacher conferences. I assumed it was an uncle or family friend. They were heading toward the concourse. Jasmine looked scared. I called out to her, but she didn't hear me over all the noise. That older man was not family. Jasmine had no uncles. Vincent and Lorraine. No confirmed sightings after 7:30 p.m. By 9 p.m., all 4 members of the Webb family had vanished from Section 127. The other 4 victims disappeared in a similar pattern. Tyrell Jackson, the LSU volunteer, was last seen at the medical station at 8:15 p.m., August 29th. He'd been helping move an elderly woman on a stretcher. A nurse remembered him saying he was going to get more medical supplies from a storage area. He never came back. Jennifer Cow, 8 months pregnant, was last seen in the bathroom line in Section 140 at 9 p.m. The woman behind her in line remembered because Jennifer's water had broken. She was crying, saying she needed help. A man in a security uniform offered to take her to the medical area. The woman in line never saw which way they went. Raymond Pops Guidry was last seen near an emergency exit at 10:30 p.m., arguing with someone. A witness couldn't hear what they were arguing about, but Pops looked angry. Then both men walked through the emergency exit door. Pops never came back. Shanice Williams was last seen with her daughter Kira at 7:00 a.m. on August 30th, day 2 of the storm. They were trying to find food. At 9:00 a.m., Kira was found alone, crying hysterically, near an emergency exit stairwell. The 3-year-old couldn't say where her mother had gone. She just kept saying, "Mama said wait here. Mama's coming back." Mama never came back. 8 people. Vanished over a span of 14 hours. In the chaos, nobody noticed. How could they? 30,000 people. No power, no order, fear and darkness everywhere. Missing persons reports were filed on scraps of paper, if at all. The National Guard was trying to keep people from stampeding, dying of heat stroke, rioting. They didn't have the resources to search for individuals. By September 1st, when buses finally arrived for evacuation, everyone was just trying to survive. Get on a bus. Get out. Get anywhere that wasn't this hell. Marcus Webb was physically forced onto a bus by a National Guard lieutenant. He was fighting, screaming that he couldn't leave without his family. "Son," the lieutenant said, "this place is getting condemned. You leave or you get dragged. I'm sorry." Marcus left. He had no choice. He was bused to Houston, to the Astrodome, where 16,000 other New Orleans evacuees were being sheltered. He filed reports with FEMA, the Red Cross, NOPD, anyone who would listen. Over 500,000 evacuees were scattered across all 50 states. No central database existed. No coordination. Just chaos. I want to stop here for a second and ask you to do something. If this story is affecting you, if you're feeling what Marcus felt, that desperate need for answers, leave a comment. Tell me you're here. Tell me you're listening, because these 8 people deserve to be remembered, and your engagement helps make sure they are. First week, September 5 to 7, 2005. The death toll climbed every day. Bodies were being recovered from floodwaters, from attics, from cars submerged on highways. New Orleans looked like a war zone. 80% of the city underwater. Rescue helicopters pulling people off rooftops, bodies floating in the streets. Marcus checked every morgue list posted online, every missing persons database, every Red Cross shelter registry. Nothing. No Patricia Webb, no Vincent Webb, no Lorraine Webb, no Jasmine Webb. He found distant relatives in Baton Rouge, a second cousin of his mother's, who agreed to take him in. He returned to New Orleans as soon as the city allowed residents back, mid-September. The National Guard escorted him to North Roman Street. His house was destroyed. The roof had caved in. Brown water stains reached 6 feet up the walls. Everything they'd owned, furniture, clothes, photographs, Jasmine's butterfly collection, Lorraine's oxygen concentrator, was ruined. Mold covered every surface. The smell of rot and sewage was overwhelming. Marcus stood in what used to be his bedroom and threw up in the corner. No sign of his family. No clues. Nothing. First month, September-October 2005. The FBI established a missing persons task force. The Webb case was one of 2,302 initially filed. Most were resolved quickly. People found in hospitals under Jane, John Doe names, evacuees in shelters who hadn't been able to contact family, bodies identified in overwhelmed morgues. The numbers dropped. 2,302 to 1,847 to 1,203 to 1963 to 705. The Webb family remained in that final 705, missing, unaccounted for. DNA samples were taken from the destroyed house. Hairbrushes, toothbrushes, anything that might contain genetic material for eventual matching if bodies were found. The months passed. Hope dimmed. First year, 2005-2006. By the one-year anniversary, 705 people remained missing and presumed dead. Most were assumed drowned, bodies washed out into the Gulf of Mexico or buried so deep under debris that they'd never be found. The city had more pressing concerns: rebuilding, repopulating, achieving some semblance of normalcy, justice for the government failures that allowed the levees to fail, prosecutions for police brutality during the chaos, fixing a broken city. Marcus, now 16, lived with his cousin in Baton Rouge. He attended a new school where nobody knew him, which was both a relief and unbearably lonely. Twice-weekly therapy sessions, medication for depression and PTSD, anger that had nowhere to go. In April 2006, a memorial service was held for the Webb family. 4 empty caskets, a small funeral home in Baton Rouge. Maybe 30 people attended, distant relatives, Patricia's co-workers from Charity Hospital, a few of Vincent's friends from the port. Marcus refused to attend. "They're not dead," he told his therapist. "I don't know where they are, but they're not dead. I'd know. I'd feel it." His therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Simmons, said gently, "Marcus, sometimes the not knowing is harder than accepting no." He stood up, session over. They're not dead. But hope dimmed. By 2007, even Marcus had to admit that 2 years with no contact, no sightings, no bodies, no evidence of life, it meant something. It meant they were gone. The case went cold. Years, 2 to 5, 2006, 2010. As New Orleans stabilized, NOPD reopened hundreds of cases. The Superdome missing persons cases received periodic review. Detectives developed theories. Theory 1, drowned during evacuation attempts. Some evacuees, panicking or disoriented, tried to leave the Superdome on foot during the storm. They walked into floodwaters and were swept away. Bodies never recovered. Theory 2, died of medical emergencies during chaos. Heat stroke, heart attacks, diabetic comas, bodies possibly lost in the morgue confusion, hundreds of unidentified remains, DNA testing overwhelmed. Theory 3, relocated and lost contact. Rare, but it happened. Some evacuees, traumatized and displaced, started new lives elsewhere without contacting family. None of these theories fit the Webb family. Vincent's bank accounts were never accessed. Not one withdrawal, not one transaction. Patricia's nursing license was never renewed, her social security number never used for employment. No death certificates were ever filed, no life insurance claims made. They didn't relocate. They didn't start over somewhere else. They simply ceased to exist on August 29, 2005. DNA comparisons to unidentified remains, all negative. Years 5 to 10, 2010, 2015. Media commemorations on the 5th and 10th anniversaries of Katrina. The 705 missing were mentioned, but briefly, a footnote. The Webbs became a statistic. Marcus aged out of foster care at 18. He enrolled at the University of New Orleans, studying criminal justice. He volunteered with missing persons non-profits, Louisiana Missing Persons Project, NAMUS, the Doe Network. Every August 29th, he visited the Superdome, stood outside, tried to remember exactly where Section 127 had been. He FOIA requested every document related to Katrina, evacuation lists, National Guard logs, medical records, morgue reports. Thousands upon thousands of pages. He read every single one. Nothing actionable, nothing that explained where his family went. Years 10, 19, 2015, 2024. Detective Sarah Chen inherited the cold case in 2018. She was 7 years old during Katrina, evacuated to Dallas with her family. They'd been lucky: car, money, a place to go. She never forgot watching the news, seeing people trapped on rooftops, waving for help that came too slowly or not at all. She joined NOPD in 2015 specifically to work on these cases, the forgotten ones, the 705. She re-interviewed Marcus annually. She pushed for DNA retesting using improved technology. She studied the Superdome layout obsessively, blueprints, security footage from before the storm, employee interviews. In 2021, she caught a break, a deathbed confession from a former National Guard soldier about stealing supplies from the Superdome during Katrina. It led nowhere regarding the missing persons, but it proved something important. The official reports were incomplete. Things happened in that building that were never documented. Crimes committed that were never investigated. By 2024, Detective Chen had a 900-page file on the web case. She knew their story better than her own family's history. She knew Patricia's favorite color was purple. She knew Vincent had a tattoo of an anchor on his left shoulder. She knew Jasmine wanted to be a veterinarian. She knew Lorraine had survived breast cancer in 1998. She knew they deserved answers. And then, July 17, 2024, a contractor named Miguel Santos was hired to inspect flood-damaged areas of the Superdome during renovations. He found something that had been hiding in plain sight for 19 years. July 17, 2024, Wednesday, 2:14 p.m. Miguel Santos, 43 years old, structural engineer with Crescent City Construction, was having a spectacularly shitty day. The moisture readings in the Superdome's upper service levels weren't making sense. High humidity in areas that should have been dry for years. His supervisor wanted answers, and Miguel was the unlucky bastard who had to crawl around in attics and crawl spaces to find them. The Superdome had undergone billions of dollars in improvements since Katrina. New roof, new everything. But some of the original infrastructure remained, sealed off and forgotten. Section 237's access corridor led to a crawlspace attic above the concourse, an area that hadn't been touched since before the storm. Miguel pried open the warped access panel, flashlight in his mouth, moisture meter in his hand. The space was cramped, maybe 4 feet high at its peak, stretching about 60 feet. He squeezed through on his hands and knees. Insulation hung in tatters. Water stains covered the concrete, dust thick as fur. 20 feet in, his flashlight caught something that made him stop. Fabric, blue fabric, a jacket, crumpled against the far wall, half buried under insulation. Miguel's first thought, some worker left their jacket up here decades ago. Annoying but not dangerous. He crawled closer to move it, get it out of the way. Then his light caught what was beneath the jacket. Bones, small bones. A child's skull staring at nothing. Miguel's scream echoed through the empty corridor. He scrambled backward, slipped, fell against the wall, couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just screamed. By 3:00 p.m., NOPD crime scene technicians swarmed Section 237, yellow tape everywhere. Miguel sitting in the back of an ambulance, shaking, unable to form coherent sentences. By 4:00 p.m., the lead crime scene tech, a veteran named Rodriguez, emerged from the crawlspace and told his supervisor, "We've got 4 bodies up there, 4 complete skeletons, not old modern clothes. This isn't historical, this is recent." By 6:00 p.m., a 5th set of remains discovered in an adjacent utility room. This one showed signs of trauma. The skull was fractured, a spiderweb of cracks radiating from the left temple. By 8:00 p.m., Detective Sarah Chen stood in that crawlspace, shining her flashlight on the spot where 4 skeletons lay in a row, deliberately arranged, covered with insulation and old roof panels, hidden. Her hands were shaking. 19 years. 19 years these people had been up here. July 18th, 2024. Next day, forensic anthropologist Dr. Keisha Landry from LSU arrived at 6 a.m. She spent 12 hours in that crawlspace, documenting, photographing, collecting. Her preliminary findings: skeleton 1, adult female, 35-45 years old, approximately 5'4", tall. Clothing remnants suggest nurse's scrubs. Wedding ring on left hand. Skeleton 2, adult male, 40-50 years old, approximately 5'10", tall. Work boots, jeans, Port of New Orleans ID badge still in pocket. Skeleton 3, elderly female, 65-75 years old, approximately 5'2", tall. Bone density suggested COPD or similar respiratory disease. Oxygen tank valve found near remains. Skeleton 4. Child female, 8 to 10 years old. Small backpack nearby, Dora the Explorer design. Contents: stuffed rabbit, photo album with butterfly cover. Skeleton 5. Utility room. Adult female, 28-35 years old. Pregnant. Fetal bones present. Approximately 32 to 34 weeks gestation. DNA testing was fast-tracked. Priority rush. Results by July 24th. The DNA confirmed what Detective Chen already knew in her gut. Skeletons 1-4. The Webb family. Patricia Webb, 38 years old. Vincent Webb, 42 years old. Lorraine Webb, 67 years old. Jasmine Webb, 9 years old. Skeleton 5. Jennifer Cow, 31 years old, 8 months pregnant with her daughter Lily. 5 victims found. But Detective Chen remembered the files. 8 people vanished from the Superdome. Search every sealed area, she ordered. Every utility room, every service corridor, every space that hasn't been opened since 2005. They're here. The others are here. She was right. Over the next 10 days, cadaver dogs worked through the Superdome's forgotten spaces. July 20th. Tyrell Jackson's remains found in an equipment room near the medical station, still wearing his LSU t-shirt. July 23rd. Raymond Pops. Guidry's remains found in a concourse utility closet, insulin vials scattered nearby. July 26th. Shanice Williams's remains found in an emergency exit stairwell service area, near where her daughter had been found crying 19 years ago. 8 people, 8 victims, all murdered. The forensic findings were damning. None died from storm-related trauma. No drowning, no crush injuries from falling debris, no blunt force from flying objects. These weren't deaths caused by Hurricane Katrina. All showed signs of asphyxiation. The hyoid bone in the adults' throats showed fracture patterns consistent with strangulation. Jasmine's hyoid wasn't fully ossified yet, she was too young, but small fractures in her neck vertebrae suggested manual strangulation. She was choked to death with someone's hands. Jennifer Cow had suffered blunt force trauma to her skull first, fracturing her temporal bone, then was strangled post-mortem. Her unborn daughter died with her. Patricia Webb had defensive wounds, fractures on her hand bones consistent with trying to fight off an attacker. The bodies were deliberately concealed, covered with construction debris, insulation, roof panels, positioned in rarely accessed areas that required key access. Time of death. Forensic analysis of decomposition, insect activity, and environmental factors suggested all deaths occurred between 7:30 p.m. on August 29th and 6 a.m. on August 30th, 2005. A 14-hour window during the height of the storm chaos. Additional evidence found at the scenes: security guard uniform button, not National Guard issue, commercial security company, multiple zip ties, commercial grade, not military surplus. Personal belongings: Patricia's Crown Royal medicine bag with Lorraine's medications inside, Vincent's Port of New Orleans work ID, Jasmine's photo album. Jennifer's wedding ring. Most critically, DNA from multiple crime scenes matched one unknown male subject, not in any database, but consistent across all 8 murders. On July 27, 2024, Detective Chen stood in the NOPD conference room with FBI agents, the medical examiner, forensic specialists, and the district attorney. "This was murder," she said. "Multiple victims, all killed during a short window when 30,000 people were trapped here in chaos. Someone used Hurricane Katrina as cover. Someone with access to service areas. Someone who could move freely. Someone who had keys." The FBI special agent nodded. "We need to pull all employment records from August 2005. Security staff, maintenance, Superdome employees, contractors, National Guard personnel. Cross-reference against the DNA. Genetic genealogy if we have to." "Already requested," Chen said. "We'll find him." August 2nd, 2024. 6:47 a.m. The DNA match came through Genetic Genealogy Database. Byron Eugene Thibodeau. Age 47. Currently living in Slidell, Louisiana, just 30 miles from New Orleans. Employment history from 2005. Private security contractor with All Secure Inc., assigned to the Superdome from August 2004 through October 2005. He had master key access to all service areas, corridors, storage rooms, utility spaces, everything. Background: born in Houma, Louisiana, 1977, high school dropout. Brief stint in the Army, 1996-2001, ended with dishonorable discharge for assault against another soldier. Hired by All Secure in 2004, despite the record, the company was cutting corners, hiring anyone, background checks, minimal. August 29, 2005. Thibodeau's time card showed he worked a 16-hour shift, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. during Katrina. He was documented as present during evacuee intake, crowd control, assisting with security throughout the crisis. His supervisor's report, filed September 2005, called him exemplary and heroic for helping manage the crowds. Current status: Thibodeau worked as a warehouse security guard in Slidell under a different security company. Clean record since 2005. Married, 2 kids, lived in a modest house on a quiet street. He'd been hiding in plain sight for 19 years. August 3, 2024. 6 a.m. SWAT team, FBI Tactical Unit, NOPD detectives. They surrounded the house on Maple Street in Slidell. Quiet neighborhood, children's bikes in yards, American flags on porches. When they breached the door, Byron Thibodeau was eating breakfast, cereal, cornflakes. He didn't run, didn't fight, just looked up at the guns pointed at his face and said, "Took you long enough. If you're still watching, and I really hope you are, please hit that subscribe button, because what this man did, what he's about to confess to, is something people need to know about. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a security guard eating cornflakes." Interrogation Room 3, NOPD Headquarters, August 3, 2024, 2 p.m. Byron Thibodeau sat across from Detective Sarah Chen and FBI Special Agent Marcus Reeves. The coincidence of the agent's first name wasn't lost on anyone. Thibodeau had waived his right to an attorney. He wanted to talk. For the first 6 hours he said nothing, just stared at the wall, occasionally asking for water, bathroom breaks. Detectives tried everything. Good cop, bad cop, appeals to conscience, tactical silence. Nothing. Then, at 8:17 p.m., he started talking. Detective Chen theorized later that he'd held the secret for 19 years, and some part of him, the part that craved recognition, that wanted his actions acknowledged, needed it known. Serial killers often want credit. They want people to understand how smart they are, how they got away with it. Thibodeau was no exception. What follows is reconstructed from the interrogation transcripts, forensic evidence, and investigation findings. Byron Thibodeau had worked the Superdome for a year before Katrina. He knew the building like most people know their houses. Every corridor, every storage room, every blind spot where the cameras didn't reach, every service entrance that required a key, every stairwell that led to forgotten spaces. He was 28 years old in August 2005. Average height, average build, forgettable face. The kind of person you pass on the street and don't remember. He'd been dishonorably discharged from the army for assaulting another soldier. Broke the man's jaw in 3 places because he'd been disrespected. All Secure hired him anyway because bodies were cheap and background checks expensive. He'd never killed before. He was certain of that, and forensic psychologists would later confirm. No unsolved murders matching his MO before 2005. No missing persons linked to him. Whatever darkness lived in Byron Thibodeau, it had been waiting for the right opportunity. Hurricane Katrina provided that opportunity. Nobody was in charge, he told the detectives, his voice flat, emotionless. No cameras working, no radios, everyone screaming, crying, too dark to see. I walked around for hours that first day just watching. Nobody even looked at me. Security uniform, keys on my belt, I was invisible, just part of the machinery. He paused. I realized I could do anything. Anything at all, and nobody would know. 7:45 p.m., August 29, 2005. Thibodeau encountered Patricia Webb in the concourse. She was frantic, asking everyone she passed about medical help. Her mother couldn't breathe. She was a nurse. She knew her mother was in serious trouble. I told her I'd take her to the better triage area, Thibodeau said. The one on the lower level, quieter, more supplies. She believed me because I had a uniform and keys. People always believe the uniform. He led her through a service door marked Authorized Personnel Only, down a corridor, into Section 237 service area. The door locked behind them. Patricia Webb realized her mistake too late. She fought, Thibodeau said almost admiringly. Scratched my face, broke free for a second, but I had a zip tie. Security guards carry them for flexi cuffs. I got it around her neck, pulled tight. She stopped fighting pretty fast. He left her body in the service corridor and went back out to the chaos. 8:01 p.m., August 29th, 2005. Thibodeau found Lorraine Webb and Jasmine Webb in section 127, the elderly woman and the child, waiting for Patricia and Vincent to return. They were alone in a small cluster of evacuees, most people having moved to drier areas after the roof breach. I told them Patricia sent me, Thibodeau explained, that she'd found a good medical area and wanted them to come. The old lady was too sick to question anything. The little girl held my hand. She trusted me. He led them to the same service corridor. Lorraine Webb died quickly. Her compromised respiratory system meant she couldn't fight, couldn't struggle for long. The zip tie cut off her air. She was dead in less than 90 seconds. Jasmine Webb screamed, 9 years old, watching her grandmother murdered, understanding she was next. I put my hand over her mouth, Thibodeau said. His voice remained flat, clinical. No emotion. Then around her throat. She was little. It didn't take long. When asked why a child, why any of this, Thibodeau shrugged. She saw. She would have told. 8:30 p.m., August 29th, 2005. Vincent Webb returned to section 127 frantic. His wife was gone, his mother was gone, his daughter was gone. He was asking everyone, shouting their names, desperate. Thibodeau, wearing his security uniform, approached. He said he'd seen them, a woman and elderly lady and a child, heading toward emergency exit 7 on the lower concourse. Vincent Webb believed him, followed him. Emergency exit 7 led to another service area. Vincent Webb realized the trap only when the door locked behind them. He was bigger than me, Thibodeau admitted. Strong. We fought. He got me on the ground for a second, but I had the zip tie ready, got it around his neck from behind. Once it's tight, they can't fight. They just... He made a gesture, hands fluttering. Stop. Vincent Webb's body was dragged to a different storage area closer to the emergency exit. Hidden behind stacked equipment, 4 members of the Webb family, dead in 1 hour. And Thibodeau wasn't done. Over the next 9 hours, as Hurricane Katrina's eye wall passed and the winds began to die, as flooding outside reached catastrophic levels and people inside the Superdome huddled in terror, Byron Thibodeau prowled. 10 p.m., August 29th, 2005. Jennifer Cow, 8 months pregnant, water-broken in labor, terrified. Thibodeau found her in a hallway, crying, asking for help. He led her toward what he claimed was a medical area. She followed because she had no choice. She was in labor, alone, desperate. He struck her head with a flashlight first. The blow fractured her skull. She collapsed. He strangled her afterward, though forensics suggested she might have already been dying from the head trauma. Her unborn daughter Lily died with her. She was easy, Thibodeau said. Already hurt, didn't fight much. 11:30 p.m., August 29th, 2005. Tyrell Jackson, 19-year-old LSU student, volunteering. He'd been helping at the medical station, moving supplies, assisting elderly evacuees. He asked Thibodeau about accessing a storage area for more medical supplies. Thibodeau led him to the equipment room, locked door behind them. Tyrell never saw it coming. Zip tie around his neck from behind, pulled tight until the college student stopped struggling. He wanted to help people, Thibodeau said, made him easy to kill. 2 a.m., August 30th, 2005. Raymond Pops Guidry, diabetic, 58 years old. He was arguing with Thibodeau about locked emergency exits, saying people needed to be able to get out. This was a fire hazard. He was going to report this. Thibodeau led him to a supervisor's office to file the complaint. The utility closet door locked. Pops fought, but he was older, sick, weakening from lack of insulin. Thibodeau beat him with a pipe until he stopped moving, then strangled him to be certain. 5:30 a.m., August 30th, 2005. Shanice Williams, 24, single mother. She was looking for food for her daughter Kira, asked Thibodeau if he knew where she could get formula, anything for a 3-year-old. He said he had supplies in a storage area, told her to leave her daughter with some other mothers. He'd be quick, she'd be right back. Shanice believed him. She followed him to the emergency exit stairwell service area. She never came back. Kira Williams was found crying 2 hours later, exactly where her mother had left her. She never saw her mother again until DNA allowed her to bury her mother's remains 19 years later. 8 people, 14 hours. One man with a uniform and keys and absolute power during absolute chaos. Byron Thibodeau killed 8 people, hid their bodies in spaces he knew wouldn't be accessed, then went home on September 1st when his shift ended. He received a commendation from his security company for his dedicated service during the crisis. He never killed again. Forensic psychologists would spend months analyzing this. Their conclusion: opportunistic serial killer with power, control, compulsions. Katrina provided unique circumstances: authority position, chaos, no accountability, darkness. Before and after, he lacked the opportunity and cover. He'd been waiting his entire life for those specific conditions. They aligned once. For 72 hours, 8 people died. When asked if he felt remorse, Thibodeau said, "I felt powerful. For the first time in my life, I had complete power. I could choose who lived and who died. Nobody could stop me. Nobody even knew." When asked if he would do it again, he said, "If I could, I need you to do something for me. I need you to comment right now. Type the names: Patricia Webb, Vincent Webb, Lorraine Webb, Jasmine Webb, Jennifer Cow, Tyrell Jackson, Raymond Guidry, Shanice Williams. Say their names. Make sure they're remembered as people, not just victims. Please." August 5th, 2024. Positive DNA identification confirmed. Detective Sarah Chen drove to Marcus Webb's apartment in New Orleans. He'd moved back to the city in 2015, determined to be close to where his family was last seen. She knocked on his door at 9 a.m. He opened it, saw her face, and knew. "You found them." "Yes." Marcus Webb, 34 years old, collapsed against the doorframe. 19 years of not knowing, of hoping, of worst-case scenarios running through his head every single day. It all came crashing down. Where? The Superdome. They never left. She told him everything: the crawl space, the bodies, the identification, the other victims, Byron Thibodeau, the confession. Marcus listened without speaking. Tears ran down his face, but he made no sound. When Detective Chen finished, he said, "I knew they didn't abandon me. I knew it. I knew they wouldn't leave me." "No," Chen said. "They loved you very much. They died trying to keep you safe." Marcus Webb would later say in interviews, "For 19 years I thought maybe they drowned, maybe they were somewhere else. Maybe they started a new life and forgot about me. I was wrong about how they died, but I was right about one thing: they didn't abandon me. They were taken, and the man who took them is going to pay." August 29th, 2024, 19th Anniversary Memorial Service, New Orleans, Louisiana, Superdome Plaza, all 8 victims honored. Photographs displayed: Patricia in her nursing scrubs, Vincent with grease-stained hands from the port, Lorraine sitting on her porch, Jasmine's school picture with her gap-toothed smile, Jennifer Cow in her convenience store, hand on her pregnant belly, Tyrell Jackson in his LSU shirt, Raymond Guidry at his retirement party, Shanice Williams holding baby Kira. Families achieved closure, though tainted forever by the horror of how their loved ones died. These weren't natural deaths, weren't accidents, weren't even the storm's fault. These were murders, premeditated, methodical, enabled by chaos. Kira Williams, now 22 years old, spoke at the memorial. "I was 3 years old when my mother put me down and told me to wait. I waited. I waited 19 years. Now I know why she never came back. Now I can finally say goodbye." Marcus Webb filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against All Secure Inc., defunct but insurance remained, and the Superdome's management company, alleging negligent hiring and failure to protect evacuees. The case settled in early 2025 for an undisclosed amount. Marcus donated the majority to missing persons organizations and disaster relief charities. He became a victim advocate, speaking at conferences, training disaster response teams, ensuring that what happened in the Superdome could never happen again. Justice. Byron Eugene Thibodeau, charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder. Louisiana death penalty case. He pleaded not guilty, claiming the confessions were coerced. Forensic evidence proved otherwise. His DNA at every scene, forensic timeline matching his confession, no other explanation possible. Trial set for June 2025. Orleans Parish District Attorney is seeking death penalty. Thibodeau's public defenders are arguing diminished capacity, PTSD from the storm. temporary insanity. Nobody believes it. As of December 2024, Thibodeau remains in Orleans Parish Prison, maximum security, isolated from general population. Other inmates have a special hatred for child killers. He'll likely die in prison whether the needle or another inmate gets him first. Forensic psychologists diagnosed antisocial personality disorder, sexual sadism disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. He fit the profile of an opportunistic serial killer, someone who'd never killed before because circumstances hadn't aligned, but who'd been waiting, fantasizing, planning. Katrina gave him his chance. He took it. Systemic changes. The 8 Superdome murders led to nationwide disaster response reforms. Lesson 1. Disaster victim tracking. FEMA now mandates biometric tracking, fingerprints, photographs, DNA swabs if possible, for all evacuees entering disaster shelters. Digital database with redundant backups. Real-time tracking of who enters, who leaves, where they're transported. No more lost in the chaos. No more 705 missing people with no answers. Lesson 2. Shelter security. Federal guidelines now require comprehensive background checks for all disaster shelter security personnel, including private contractors. National Guard presence minimum ratios, 1 soldier per 100 evacuees. Security cameras with battery backup mandatory. Keycard access logged digitally. Lesson 3. Facility accountability. Post-disaster facility searches now mandatory before sealing or renovation. Cadaver dogs sweep every area. Nothing gets closed without forensic clearance. The Superdome was partially sealed without complete searches. 8 bodies lay hidden for 19 years. That can never happen again. Lesson 4. Cold case. Persistence. Detective Chen's dedication proved that cases must never fully close. DNA technology improves yearly. Evidence must be preserved indefinitely. Every unidentified remain deserves continuous investigation. The 705 missing from Katrina are still being investigated. 19 years later, answers are still being found. Final reflection. Hurricane Katrina killed 133 people in Louisiana. The storm's 125 mph winds, catastrophic flooding from 53 levee failures, storm surge that reached 28 feet in some areas, nature's violence took lives in minutes to hours. Drowning, trauma, heat stroke, medical emergencies. But one man, given a security uniform and a master key and absolute chaos, used that same storm to kill 8 people over 20 hours, methodically, deliberately, savoring each one. Nature's cruelty is random, overwhelming, and brief. Human cruelty is deliberate, intimate, and waits patiently for opportunity. The Webb family didn't drown in Katrina's floodwaters. Patricia Webb didn't die trying to find medical help. Vincent Webb didn't die searching for his family. Lorraine Webb didn't die from COPD complications. Jasmine Webb didn't die in the chaos. They were murdered in the shadows of a disaster by a man who saw an opportunity and took it. They were strangled, hidden, forgotten for 19 years, while the city rebuilt around their hidden graves. And for those 19 years, Marcus Webb lived not knowing, not understanding, carrying the weight of 872,000 questions that had no answers, until a contractor named Miguel Santos crawled into a crawl space and found what should have been found in September 2005. Byron Thibodeau thought he'd gotten away with it forever. He was wrong. The truth doesn't stay buried forever. Sometimes it takes 19 years. Sometimes it takes a determined detective who won't let go. Sometimes it takes improving technology and genetic genealogy, and people who refuse to forget. But the truth comes. Patricia, Vincent, Lorraine, Jasmine, Jennifer, Tyrell, Raymond, Shanice, these 8 people mattered. They were loved. They are remembered. And the man who killed them will die knowing that he didn't win. He didn't get away with it. He's just another coward who mistook chaos for opportunity, who thought a uniform meant power, who learned too late that evil always leaves evidence. The Superdome stands today renovated and renewed. Football games every season. Concerts, events, life. But Section 237's crawl space remains sealed. A memorial plaque installed. 8 names engraved, lest we forget. Thank you for watching this entire story. Seriously, thank you. If it affected you, if you're feeling anything right now, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, Which victim's story hit you hardest? Who do you want to make sure is remembered? These 8 people deserved better. They deserve to survive that storm. They deserve to go home. The least we can do is remember their names.